for myself, the thing that I want to know most is right now what we are seeing over there in the United States. You have the latest SLU survey that's suggesting that we're seeing this incremental creep higher in credit tightening for the large and medium-sized banks in the US. Is this something that is also playing through for yourselves, particularly if we're looking at C&I, particularly if we're looking at those kinds of credit loans?
I think the US environment and Southeast Asia and Singapore are very different. Okay, the US, they were looking at rapidly increasing high interest rates for a long time. And today, with less economic activities, a lot of those, can they be sustained, or NPL ratios, can they be done? If you look at this part of the world, we are actually quite different, okay? We do have massive liquidity, okay? And most of the banks are willing to lend. Question is that, are we confident of the credit quality? There are activities now. I mean, you look at it, the GDP growth are quite decent, not negative, decent. And wealth activities and tourism and all, okay, they are coming back to this part of the world. So we are a little bit more optimistic that when the market get used to this so-called higher for longer period, there will be loans demand coming back. Okay, we are more hopeful, and we are quite hopeful that that will happen in the second half. There are still some customers that haven't decided as to how much rates will fall, but I think there are enough consensus now that it will not be as big or as significant, and you'll probably be at the last quarter of the year. So we are a little bit more bullish in this part of the world.
Mr. Lee, this is JP Ong, and to your point, you did say that it's a very different context when you look at Asia. In fact, if you look at this pie chart, again, it seems that most of your income, about 80% or over 80% of that is coming actually from Southeast Asia, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand, to name a few. Where are you seeing loan growth perhaps as the most promising within this region that's so key for UOB?
So like I said, we are quite optimistic with a fair bit of what's happening in the region. So some of the geopolitical tension actually benefited us. So we talk about the China Plus One strategy, the relocation of the supply chain, that definitely benefited us. So we are quite hopeful that we will see pockets of growth. For example, semiconductors in Malaysia, commodities in Indonesia, EVs in Thailand, and manufacturing in Vietnam. We are seeing more and more of these companies looking to move their manufacturing activities here. With that, it will generate a whole intra-regional ecosystem, and the intra-regional trade will go up, and that's where our market is. We're also hopeful that the growth is actually quite sustainable, and if the GDP stays, right, you look at the rising wealth of the demography in Southeast Asia, the few hundred millions of people going into the high net worth, or to some extent even into millionaire status. That we think that will be a good ground foundation for us as we did the Citi acquisition to play in this. So we are quite hopeful that both in the consumer space and in the corporate space, there will be activities.